Alicia Gardner.
Here.
Alyssa Parks.
Present.
Chuck Melkey.
Here.
Carrie Germain.
Present.
Jessica LaNave.
Present.
John Sayer.
Here.
Brian Sapanic.
Here.
We are all here and accounted for. Thank you, Sue. All right, with that, please join me in the pledge. Welcome, everyone. We have a very full agenda this evening, and I'm going to begin with public comments that are specific to our agenda this evening. If you'd like to address the board, please stand, come to the podium, state your name, and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Is there anyone? No? Yes? Okay. All right, moving on. We have before us a consent agenda, and I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Support.
Alicia, and I think I heard maybe Jack? Or was that Chuck? All right. Any comments or questions? Hearing none. Sue, would you do roll call, please?
Brian Sapanic.
Yes.
Chuck Melkey.
Yes.
Carrie Germain.
Yes.
Jack Sayer.
Yes.
Jessica LaNave.
Yes.
Alicia Gardner.
Yes.
And Alyssa Parks.
Yes. Okay. Motion passes. Going on to our superintendent report. Mr. Micah, I know you have a lot of information for us.
Thank you. I do.
Thanks.
I'm going to try and keep my comments today a little shorter because we have quite a bit on the agenda, but and we'll be talking and discussing later in the meeting, but I wanted to give a brief update. We had our State of the Schools address last night. Was very pleased with the people who attended and participated, and we're very appreciative for everyone that came out and for board members that participated as well. We also had our board tours this morning, starting out at Gaines and then moving to Moorish and ultimately the middle school. Those were, hopefully a great opportunity for people to see kids in the classrooms and teachers doing and support staff doing great things. I do want to update you that last week we did, as I had indicated prior, sent out these trifolds to all of the residences in the Gaines community, just so that you have one for your reference. And they're essentially, you open it up and it's kind of a marketing tool to talk a lot about what Gaines has to offer. The residents that are in our community, we believe there are quite a number of them that are not attending Gaines, and they can enroll at any time. So we're basically putting the word out there to try and entice them to enroll now if they can, or at minimum to let us know that they plan on enrolling in the fall so that we have some data that we can speak to, as I know that discussion is forthcoming in March. And so this document has been into the mailboxes of all of the residences in that Gaines area. One of the other things I wanted to update you on is we get a lot of questions about our calendar, and I'm well aware that parents are trying to make plans for this fall already, and they want, when is school going to start and when are all of those things going to happen. Just as kind of an informational piece, we work with our teachers through the collective bargaining process to negotiate a calendar, and that's a process that exists. And so we are in the process of doing that, and certainly it's one piece of the puzzle, but we work collaboratively with them to make sure we get that done. In years when we have it made out for a couple years, it's really nice because then parents have a couple years head start on what the dates are. There's nothing that any one party can do at this point to just speed it up. It is what it is, and so I understand that people want those dates, and we are working towards that. But just so that everybody understands how that operates and works. Other than that, very, very exciting time in the district as we're preparing and thinking about not just wrapping up this year, but we're starting the scheduling process and staffing and thinking about next year. This weekend is a long weekend for the district. We have Friday and Monday as our winter break, and so we will have President's Day off and then also Friday. So hopefully students and teachers and staff will be able to enjoy that time with their families. So that is all I have for my report.
Thanks, Ben. Any questions for Ben? I just want to thank you, Ben. The tours this morning were great. It was amazing to see the work that's been done on the addition at the middle school, all of the work that's going on at Gaines and Moorish, and the people were so welcoming, and it was great to see the children there. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Moving on, Miss Elena Cook. Would you like to do your student board representative report?
Good evening. I'm very sorry for my absence at the last meeting. I was feeling under the weather, and I felt it was probably better that I stay home and away from everyone. There is a lot happening in the district right now. Our Elms Road and our Moorish Elementaries, they have teamed up to create a Blueberry Squad, which is going around the school posting positive messages, encouraging just students and staff. I was in Elms the other day, and there were sticky notes all over the wall with a bunch of encouraging comments and things. Elms also sent 14 students down to the Genesee County Humane Society last week. They participated in the Furry Tales program, where they were able to read to the animals and spend time helping to just socialize them. The trip was a great success. They all had a great time, and they're hoping to be able to do it again soon. And then Syrene's Family Wellness Night is going to be February 24th from 6 to 7:30 at the school. The middle school has lots of sports going on right now, and they are all doing very well. The middle school cheer team now has 6 first-place finishes. The middle school science classes are working hard on a project for Kettering University, as well as building a prosthetic device for a disabled student. They have also started their whole school 5-point SEL lesson, which is just a self-aware skill that helps them deal with their emotions and where they are and the best way to deal with how they are feeling at that moment. Their POM team took first and second in all of their competitions, and their 6th grade science classes are, like I said, working hard to team up with Kettering University. The middle school and high school archery team has combined, and they had a tournament last Saturday, and they all did very well from what I heard. At the high school, the girls varsity basketball won their last game 59-28. The freshman basketball won in overtime 61-56, and varsity also won. Coach Kevin Root, who is the high school boys basketball team, defeated Kersley during the coming home game. We all had a wonderful time at the dance, even though it was 3 snow days. Coach Jesse Cummins was named the Metro League Stripes Division Wrestling Coach of the Year. Our varsity competitive cheer, our varsity bowling team, and then our varsity wrestling all has won their competitions in the past few weeks. We have 4 wrestling members who are going on to the next, they're going on to the next level and competing in the regional meet. A few days ago, we had our Flint Metro Student Council meeting where several schools sent representatives and they learned several skills such as leadership, love for their community, and service. Debate Club has started Mondays after school in room 310, and I did check, and it is open to the public if you guys would like to attend. However, you do not have to. Right now, the high school would like to thank Mr. Jerry Brown for his continued volunteer service. Luna, our therapy dog, has been amazing during these unique times. I know several times I have stopped in the hallway, and she has pretended not to notice me, but it's still really nice. Next weekend, on Saturday, at 8 o'clock, our high school drama department is going to be having our senior showcase. This is a completely student-run project which allows students to step out of their comfort zones and explore different aspects of the theater world. Along with group numbers and scenes, they are having alumni come back, as well as teachers, staff, and administrators who have had an impact on their lives, and they will be participating in a song with us. I would highly encourage anyone that can make it to come out and support our senior class. As Mr. Micah mentioned, we do not have school this Friday and this Monday, and that is a welcome break for lots of our students and staff right now. The 8th grade and freshman DC trip is this weekend. In fact, they leave in about 20 minutes. and they are all very excited about that. We are hoping to have another student roundtable forum. It was supposed to be next week. However, due to scheduling conflicts, we have had to cancel that. So we are looking for within the first few weeks of March. For our student spotlights, we will be recognizing the high school January and February students of the month. So for the senior class, that's Emily Smith. Juniors is Tori Edgerton and Maya Mangat. Sophomores is Gabriel Britt and Jayla Evans. And then freshmen is Missiana Bates and Morgan Dominic. Any questions?
Sure, go ahead.
How many, I missed it, Elena, how many of the high school kids went to the furry tales with the young kids? Roughly?
I believe it was just our elementary students, and there were 14 that went from Elms.
Okay, nobody went from the high school though to like accompany them or help them?
I do not believe so.
Okay,
But I might be wrong.
all right. You're going to drum up some support for that?
I'll do my best.
Thank you. Thank you, Carrie. And it's like some of the adult kids to go, you know what I mean, to help the little kids and be good for them all. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Any other questions for Elena? Elena, thank you, and thanks for representing the students last night so well at the State of the Schools program. We also had two other young ladies there, one from the 8th grade, Tira. Yes, Goodman, and Lily West. And they did an amazing job presenting and representing their classes and their schools, so kudos to them. All right, moving on. You do have for information in your packet some employment of non-certified staff. And then let's move on to the board subcommittee reports. Brian, you want to go first with policy?
I'm
Oh,
chair of the
Jack.
policy committee.
You know, those are hard habits to break.
No, it's
Go ahead,
fine.
Jack, sorry.
So, policy committee was called to order by me at 7:36 in the morning. Present were myself, Jessica Lenave, Carrie Germain, Alyssa Parks, Brian Spanik, Ben Meinke, and Rod Heatherton. Our first item of discussion was over policy 2306, which is in relation to board compensation. Superintendent Meinke opened this on the IRS's rules in regards to taxes and W-2s versus 1099s for board members. Vice President Sapanik spoke to the idea and raised a couple, my apologies. Vice President Sapanik spoke to an idea raised by a couple board members to raise the current pay to put the board members to $1,500 after taxes. The idea was raised whether or not to pay board members per meeting, and strong consensus was found that that idea wasn't good. Member Parks brought up some concerns over raising the board's pay, and more discussion is going to be needed on this topic. Our next discussion item was over policy 4206, which is about employment contracts, and this will be in relation to the superintendent's power to hire and fire non-exempt staff. I opened this discussion, and to make it short, I basically said we need to make it more clear to give him this power. Member Parks raised questions over the language of, quote, where necessary in the policy. Superintendent Meinke agreed that the policy likely should change in language some. President Germain recommended that we add a clear authorization in policy 2101, section 6, connecting it to policy 4206. I suggested removing the language of where necessary, and Treasurer Lenave brought up concerns of removing the language without a provision in place to notify the board of these hirings, and consensus was found to add a clause for the superintendent to notify the board of all non-exempt staff hires. Our next agenda item was policy 1101, which is the general policy statement. I opened the discussion on the language and potential removal of the line, quote, policies are intended to be flexible where possible. Member Parks agreed with this, stating that the enforcement of the policies is laid out in the next three sections of B, 1, and 2. Vice President Sapanik agreed with the striking of the line from the policy. Ms. Lenave disagreed with the removal, primarily for the purpose of new board member guidance. President Germain agreed that with a slight change in the language, but recommended that we ask Troon during our workshop in March why the line was even added to the policy. Further discussion will be needed both with Troon and in committee. Policy 2305 was our next agenda item. This is in relation to reimbursement and travel expenses, specifically Section B3 of the policy. I opened the discussion on what the current reimbursement for meals during travel are, and Vice President Stepanek suggested raising these rates slightly. Mr. Meinke agreed, suggested adding a reasonable reimbursement clause, which Treasurer Lenave disagreed with, saying that we should add a specific amount to the provision. It was suggested that the policy be changed to simply reimburse all board member meals during travel up to $100 a day. The committee also agreed that striking Section C was a good idea, and consensus on both ideas was found. The next agenda item was Policy 2501, and this is going to be in relation to the posting of minutes during meetings. Questions over the wording of the language and our current compliance with the policy were raised. It was recommended that we ask Troon if we need to be explicit in our postings. Treasurer Lenave, however, found that on mobile, we are compliant with this policy, and it is actually very prominent. The discussion over this item ended asking Superintendent Meinke to ensure that we were compliant when we restructure the website in the future. There was no public comment, there was no further board comments, and we moved into academic achievement at 9:13 in the morning.
Any comments or questions for Jack? Sure, go ahead, Chuck.
One is the $100 a day reimbursement. That's for, of course, I've never been on any trips where I've drawn any money, but that's for your, what's the per diem now as a standard? Can you tell us that? The state has guidelines. The state has guidelines on that. Do you know what they are?
Yeah, so the state actually has rates that they have for state employees. The school districts have, by policy, the ability and authority to set those rates. So right now, our policies call out a specific dollar amount for breakfast, a specific dollar amount for lunch and dinner and so on. And so what we were saying is it may be easier to manage if you were at a conference having a per diem, and then you don't have to worry about, getting a breakfast for $10 or whatever it is, just being able to say, here's a rate.
And I'm ignorant. I haven't looked at the policy. What does ours say currently?
Current rates are breakfast $10, lunch $15, dinner $20. And that's only for the board member, nothing else.
Okay. That seems kind of low to me.
That's what we would discuss.
You go get a McDonald's, it's $10 now.
Right.
And my only concern would be is that if you went just for maybe a breakfast and lunch and somebody spent $100, so they had two $50 meals. So not that anybody on this board would do that, but we have to guard for everyone. So that would be my concern. The second question is filling positions. I don't think that we should tie your hands in filling positions. My only concern is that if it's a current position, then obviously you have to fill it. If we make up 4 or 5 or 10 new positions and we may be under on our budget, I still think that should be brought to the board to be notified. Just say, hey, we have extra $500,000 in the budget, so I'm going to hire 10 positions. Not that you would do that. It's protection from future superintendents. And that's my only concern. So that's all I have, Carrie. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Anyone else? Okay. All right, moving on to academic achievement. As Jack said, we moved right into the academic achievement meeting on Tuesday. We had one agenda item, and that was the district MTSS winter meeting that was held last Wednesday. Rod gave us an overview of the content of that meeting. They were going to be looking at grade level data, achievement benchmark assessments, which he's going to go over this evening with us for math and reading, and then some of the reflection questions that the team would be looking at. The MTSS district team is made up of over 40 educators and administrators, and they had a variety of topics that they covered. And I think I got this right, Rod or Ben, that Mr. Kaplan from the middle school has the Marvel Heroes scale, is that right? Where I think we saw it when we were there on a board tour. We're at number 5, which is like
The Hulk.
the Hulk.
He also has Star Wars, so.
Okay. And social emotional learning, which we continue to look at as a district. It's very important, especially throughout the pandemic and the impact that it's had on children, the trauma. And we did talk at a previous meeting about the kickboard system and how educators are being encouraged to document student behavior positive and where there's opportunities and it can be tracked centrally, and then they can make referrals based on some of the information that's being fed into it. A great system. And then Kevin Claren, who always able to take information and just put it all together in the right way, was going to talk about tiered fidelity for trauma-informed care. And I'm hoping that you can share some more information about that, Rod, as we go forward. And then they did look at the data that Rod's going to go over with us tonight. And I would ask that anybody who has a few minutes, it's probably about 5 minutes, watch the video, Be a Mr. Jensen. Grab a Kleenex first, it's adorable, and very powerful. So they also presented that as well. And there were no public comments, and we did thank Rod and Ben for all the work that they do with their teams on MTSS. But we also asked that we include it in the strategic planning so that we're making sure that there's an infrastructure and that the focus is maintained. And we adjourned at 9:46. Any questions? All right. Moving on. I think, Jessica, you're up.
I am. I already have a correction to my Finance Committee report. I forgot in the title to put Finance Committee. It says the SCCS committee meeting. The meeting was called by myself on February 7th. The meeting time was 2 p.m. Attending were myself, Chuck Melke, Alyssa Parks, Brian Sapanik, Ben Minka, Chris Gray, Rod Heatherton, and R.C. Hunt. The meeting was called to order at 2:08. Our cash and investment summary as of January 31st, 2022 is the general fund has $5,800,140.06. Our sinking fund has $1,015,430.27. Our food service fund has $839,479.94. Our student activity fund has $273,307.03. Our debt service is $2,295,696.90. Our 2018 bond capital project fund has $14,198,409.48. So giving us a total cash and investment of $24,425,463.68. This was reviewed with no issues. Our check register review, we reviewed with no issues. There was discussion that the Sheriff's Department may do CPR training for free. We discussed the number of schools that signage was put up at and that chemicals were purchased for the pool, and we discussed lawn care bids. We also discussed that all vendors go through the SAM.gov, which is the System for Award Management background check, because all federal funding is involved, or because federal funding is involved. All checks require 2 signers, and that is not including the superintendent nor the assistant superintendent of business or finance signs checks. Agenda item bids and quotes. Under the bond project, we discussed the Moorish parking lot. We will need to rebid it because of redesign. Bids are due March 2nd, 2022. In food service, we discussed that we didn't discuss it. It happened. We had 2 ovens purchased, one for the high school, one for the middle school. They were each $9,700. And we also purchased an ice machine for each, the high school and the middle school, at $6,000 each. 3 quotes were received for each purchase. The next agenda item was the budget revision, and Chris Gray went through this with us. We had 3 documents reviewed and discussed with no issues. There's a typo, sorry. For the 2021-22 revised budget presentation was reviewed. The budget detailed with the revised budget was reviewed, and the revised budget resolution for adoption was reviewed. Agenda item food service, the RFP update. Michigan Department of Education is still finalizing. There was an agreement on the dates for the bidding process. Our expectation is that we will have the RFP sent out with submissions due in early to mid-March. There were no public comments, and the committee did have a brief discussion, again, as Secretary Sayer said regarding the W-2 board member payment options, and our meeting met first, and we said we would be discussing it at policy. The Finance Committee talks ended at 3:34 p.m. and moved into the Operations Committee meeting. And I will ask, do you accept my report as presented? Honestly, with the correction, right? Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept Jessica's report as presented, and I have a second from Chuck. All right, any comments or questions? Sue, could you do a roll call, please?
Carrie Germain,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey,
Yes.
Alyssa Parks,
Yes.
Alicia Gardner,
Yes.
Jessica Lenave,
Yes.
Brian Sapanic. Jack Sayer.
Yes.
7 yes.
Thank you, motion passes. Thanks, Jessica. All right, and moving on to, we call it now our Building Grounds and Operations Committee.
Yes, we started that at 3:34 PM, right after the finance with Jessica. There'll be some redundance of some things said here. Present was myself, Chris Gray, Jessica, Rod Hetherington, Brian was there, Ben, R.C. Hunt, and Alicia was there. The first one was the ongoing projects. First item agenda was Mary Crapo. The RFP is being drafted by E.L. Ward and should be ready to be put out for bid early in March. Many questions were asked if we needed a management oversight firm during construction and demolition if we go through with it. And the committee consensus was most likely no, but that's going to be left up to full entire board decision. And discussion in the future, it was known by RC and Ben that costs have went up substantially since the original discussion when the soft prices were given approximately 18 to 20 months ago. Number two was lawn care service. We've had the same lawn care service for approximately 3 years at a cost of approximately $80,000 annually. It's recommended by the committee to put this out for bid. It cumulatively exceeds our threshold annual bid if it's taken its entirety for the year. RC added that the current company has done a great job in the past and that some of the lawn care will change substantially this year because of all the different building configurations and layouts due to the bond construction projects. So it's prudent that we get new bids, and Ben has also suggested that in fairness to everyone involved. And then the third issue was Allison safety training for bus drivers. RC has instituted ALICE training and emergency training for all the bus drivers in the district, along with social and emotional training for the students on the bus. He stated is going very well and hopes to have all the drivers trained in the next few weeks. This is beneficial for the students and drivers and will be also helpful to the teachers if needed to coordinate them with any emergencies in the buildings while the bus drivers are there. We had no public comment, and we adjourned the meeting at approximately 4:11 p.m. And, that was it. Thank you.
Any comments or questions for Chuck?
Quick question, Chuck.
Here you go.
For Mary Crapo, the RFP, is this specifically just a demo, or it's like any suggestions that can come forward? I just want to understand that process.
That's a great question. We did have some discussion with Ben, and he had reached out to one of the companies with no return call as of yet. And the RFP, I think we all agreed on about a month ago, just to go ahead and get that to see where we're at on price-wise. And E.L. Ward Brothers will be able to give a more substantial understanding of the asbestos removal, building demolition, bringing the land to virgin, where it can be done. So if we decide to put a ball field or something there for the community. And I don't know if there was anything else, Ben, that was brought up on that. I know we had extensive discussion on it. I'll let you take it over.
Yeah, so that's exactly correct. We're working on getting pricing on what the demolition cost would be, and it involves multiple different areas because you have the site work, plus you have the demolition crew themselves, and plus you have asbestos, both monitoring and removal. So we're looking at seeing what the pricing would be. We're putting that out to bid, and we have to build the specs for that, and that'll be, as Mr. Melkey said, put out in March.
Okay.
And then we'll get the pricing, and then the board will have some data with which to make some decisions and further discussion.
Thank you.
Can I add one more thing on there? Now, it's just an afterthought. Are they going to give us any options on that? Was there's going to be some options, like if we, I don't know if that's what Alicia's asking, but that's a.
Kind of, yeah, I was like,
I didn't think about that. I don't know if me or Brian or somebody made a mention it in committee, but I don't remember if we talked about options for the actual demolition, if it costs more to do parking lots or whatever, then. So I don't know if you're going to have that built in, and UNRC can figure that out with Chris.
Yeah, there will be a price to demo the building and turn it to virgin ground and grass. But that price also, there would be an alternate then for the parking lot area.
Okay.
So that's
Yeah.
a separate.
I think, yeah, that's good, yeah. That clears it up for me too. Thank you. There was a lot of discussion on it. Thanks.
I believe it's E and L Construction.
I may have misspoke myself. I think Jessica was correcting me. What did I call them?
E and L Ward Brothers.
Yeah, no, E&L Construction.
Okay.
Period. Thank you for the correction, Brian.
and nobody's name spelled right, but we let that go.
Well, if I was before I'd want it right.
Them, I mean all the members.
All right. And did I mention it was about $5,000, give or take, to build that bid for us, which is well worth it. So we really are kind of an unknown territory with that. Okay. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Jessica.
All right, anyone else? Okay. Moving forward, we have several board discussion items, beginning with the Little Dragons Learning Center presentation. We've been looking forward to this.
Yes, I'm excited to have Miss May Bendel come forward. May is the person who leads our Little Dragons Learning Center and also oversees our latchkey programs. And so it's a great night to get a report on how our little ones are doing.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. First, I'm going to start off with an introduction. You're going to take it to my family, Travis? It's loud enough. All right. Okay, my name is Amanda Bendel. Most of you may know me as May. I'm a mother of two very energetic hockey players. I was born and raised in this community. My father was a Swartz police officer for 15 years. Excuse me, I'm really nervous. Let me take a deep breath.
You'll be
I
fine.
can't see your faces, and it's hard for me. All right, thank you. I'm a 2003 graduate, and I've worked with this district since 2014, and I've been in the field of early childhood development for 13 years. I absolutely love the people in this community, especially the children, and that is why I run the Little Dragons Learning Center. Here is actually the inside of our building. If you're ever out and about, you should come and step inside because it is state of the art and it's absolutely remarkable. It's beautiful. Rachel Holland painted the mural inside, so there you go. All right. We have 6 GSRP classrooms, full day pre-K programming Monday through Thursday. We're completely full with 104 GSRP students. Each classroom has a certified teacher, an associate teacher, and a student support specialist. So, what is GSRP? It stands for the Great Start Readiness Program. It's a state-funded, high-quality preschool program for 4-year-old children. It's free to those who qualify. Some of the qualifying components include low income and risk factors. Specific research on GSRP indicates that children provided with a high-quality preschool experience show significant positive developmental differences when compared to children from the same backgrounds who did not attend a high-quality preschool program. All right, so here's an example of our daily routine. It just goes to show you that we have specific schedules that we follow. Schedules and routines are important because they influence a child's emotional, cognitive, and social development. They help children feel safe and secure. All right, the curriculum that we use in GSRP is called HighScope. It's uniquely designed to provide a rich academic foundation while promoting independence, decision-making, cooperation, creativity, and problem-solving. The ongoing child assessment that we use is called CORE. It's an underlying component of HighScope. Objective anecdotal observations of children collected throughout natural play allows teachers to assess the children's progress and plan meaningful learning experiences. Okay, this is the fun part. All right, so here are some of our little dragons at work. So this is Sidonia. She's making jewelry out of art supplies. This is really neat. Every classroom has a light-up sensory table. Patterns with counting bears. Little bit of science and observation. More patterns with math cubes. We have some architects in some of our rooms. Some more science and fine motor. This is, I think the data skewed a little bit with this graphing because I think a lot of those goldfish are ending up in his tummy. We graph too. During the fall, we bring in a whole bunch of pumpkins. We pull the guts out. We bake seeds. Right here, they're working on their little hands and fine motor skills with hammering those golf tees into that pumpkin. That looks like she's cooking an egg, but it's not. So she's just doing some science and fine motor. Here's our playground that St. Mary's graciously shares with us. We're working on gross motor skills. We're out there all the time. Reading with friends, and letter recognition in our names. In the beginning of the year, every classroom does a scavenger hunt, so they get to know the layout of the building and everyone in the office. I look like I'm saying something really interesting, but I have goodies at my desk. So. All right, preparation for kindergarten. GSRP staff work closely with the kindergarten staff and building principals for a smoother transition into kindergarten. Our focus in pre-K is social emotional learning because it builds the foundation for academic success. That is probably the most important part of this slide. Every GSRP child that enters our program receives a backpack full of pre-K supplies. At the end of the school year, they go home with another backpack filled with kindergarten readiness supplies. The parents appreciate it, and they're very happy and grateful about it. After every checkpoint, which is what you guys call marking periods during the school year, we do a parent advisory meeting. There are 3 checkpoints. At our parent advisory meetings, we provide family activities, snacks, refreshments. We discuss data and scores. We use this as an opportunity to get feedback from our parents with a school climate survey. Now, this is really neat. I pulled a bunch of the comments. When asked what are some of the school strengths, you can see that we have a lot of happy families. A lot of parents say communication. Teachers are caring, creative, and my absolute favorite one is they think about safety first. They think about the student safety first. But lots of really awesome comments, and I just want to make sure that you guys know that I'm blessed to work with such an amazing team of hardworking and dedicated individuals. So we have some happy families. This is a picture of our parent advisory night after checkpoint 1 in early December. It was a huge turnout. We really encourage family engagement. We've done a family game night before. We've done a friendship ball every year. Actually, Ben Kitchen DJs at our friendship balls. And really all you have to do is put Baby Shark on repeat and the whole night is an absolute success. So we're all out there on the dance floor. But at this particular one, we did thumbprint canvases, and it was around the holidays, so they got to take it home for hang up on their wall or presents. This is a way for us to build bonds with our families, which is like #1 priority. You can go ahead. And then right here, just some pictures of the families at work with their kids. So they bring siblings and everything. Here's some examples of the artwork that they created. And here's some families that said they would pose for this slideshow. And then huge shout out to the Swartz Creek Middle School National Junior Honor Society. Without them, it wouldn't be the success that it was. They help out at every event, and the children love them. All right, moving on to the other program that I run or oversee is the Little Dragons Before and After Care program. We have 2 locations, one at Cyrene and one at Moorish. On the left is Moorish, on the right is Cyrene, and actually I've had the privilege, I've cared for Journey on the right ever since she was an infant at Mary Crapo. So I've had the opportunity to watch her grow. Just recently, we were awarded with funds from the Child Care Stabilization Grant. Funds were used to help stabilize operations, help support the health and safety of the children and the staff. We were able to help our families out by lowering child care rates from $9 a session to $2.50. Moorish Latchkey was awarded $79,660. Cyrene was awarded $81,122.50. And as you can see, they like Legos, so we also used grant funds to purchase new toys, games, arts, crafts, parachutes, hula hoops, you name it. I also had to purchase storage sheds for these wonderful brand new items for these students. And just a funny picture of me dressed up as the Cat in the Hat and at the Before and After Care program. Thanks, guys, for bearing with my nerves. I appreciate it. I'm better now.
Thank you, May.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. I can answer some questions.
Any questions for me?
Yeah, I have a couple, but go ahead,
Go
Brian.
ahead, Brian.
How many Little Dragons do we have at the Little Dragon facility? And what are their ages again?
The ones in GSRP at the main building,
Yes.
they have to be 4 years old and with the intent of attending a kindergarten program after they're done with that year.
So Swartz grade kindergarten.
Yes. Well, we do pull in some out-of-district kids. And they end up staying in the district. So we do take on some kids from Flint and Carmen, and they end up either having siblings in the district or continuing on staying in the district.
Then how many are there?
Specific?
General?
Oh, 104. We have 104. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Was the question, Brian, how many of the kids are percentage-wise that are in our district or in another district? I think that's what I would like to know. How, without giving me exact numbers, May,
Okay.
how many kids? I mean, what's the percentage? You got 104 kids.
So we have 104 kids. I would say that, and I'm going to throw this out there, and if it
Yeah.
changes, I can email you and let
No,
you know.
10%, 20%?
But I feel like last year we had about 70, 75 kids that were Swartz Creek.
Okay. So about 25% are out of district, roughly.
Yeah, roughly.
Okay, yeah, that was the same question I was gonna ask, and Brian asked it, and I do have one other question. You got 104 kids. You had 5 teachers there or 6?
So I have 6 classrooms.
6 classrooms.
6 teachers, 6 assistants.
Right.
And 7 student support
Good,
specialists.
you didn't make it 6, 6, and 6, you made it 6, 6, and 7. That's a good,
Correct.
good number, okay.
That's how
Do you have room for more kids? Or are you capped out? What's the cap number?
I'm capped out. I am.
Okay, that was gonna be our question, if we could
Yeah.
help you, if we could get more kids in there, but.
Yep, building licensing capacity is 106.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But they come in and they measure the layout of the
Right.
room, and we can have, we have 4 rooms with 18 and 2 rooms with 16 is what's allowed.
Okay, so we're capped out, basically.
We're capped out.
All right, that was the only questions I had, thank you.
Yeah, I guess, May, hi. It's kind of a question, but a clarification at the same time. I'm kind of familiar with the GSRP program, and we don't necessarily have a whole lot of control on, like, who enrolls, essentially. I mean, we do and we don't, but it's really more like county run. Is that correct, or dictated as far as enrollment goes?
Yes, so we prioritize specific elements. For example, in district of age, which means they're not a birthday gapper, and fit within the income guidelines, they would get first priority. And then we go to second and third, yeah.
Gotcha. And then, I don't know that this is a question for you as much as Ben, just for clarity for me. Like, I guess, where are we positioned as a district to ensure we continue in the GSRP program? Like I don't know if we enroll and we're like granted for 5 years, or is it every single year we've got to be reevaluated, or what's that process?
Yeah, so one thing that I think is a lot of assurance is that in both the legislative budgets as well as the governor's budgets, they are prioritizing early childhood and specifically GSRP programming. So I think if anything, you're going to see a rise in the increase in the budget. So they're going to continue to support that and look to expand slots. So I think the real question strategically for the district then is going to be, where are those going to be housed? And so it's certainly advantageous having them all in one building. It makes it much more manageable in terms of staffing and all of those things. You know, there certainly is discussion that can be had down the road in terms of expanding onto the building that's there, you know, and adding, you know, potential classrooms and things like that. So those are all possibilities, but I certainly think, Mr. Heatherton talked about this at the State of the Schools yesterday, to your question, and that is, you know, early childhood is going to have to be something that we really start to take a hard look at in terms of where, when, you know, how, because what we know is that when children come to us with primary literacy skills, their odds of success, even in college, is almost predictable. So it's a very strong correlation. So you know, we're really excited about all that May has done to really get this program at a top tier level. But the next question would be, if it were to expand, how, where, when, all of those things.
Any indication if they will expand the guidelines? I guess when I say expand, loosen?
They have expanded the eligibility criteria pretty extensively. So it's very, it becomes very manageable for virtually anyone. You know, when they talk about income guidelines, they're not set super low.
And they seem to be raising every year. And just recently, I think they took the income cap off, I think it was last year, and that helped a lot of families out as well.
Very good.
So may I have a couple questions for you?
Yeah.
If you don't mind. Thanks for being here. So we heard last night at the State of the Schools that there's a lot of concerns about children's behavior and the impact of the pandemic, and even heard about the challenges related to young children not having the normal experiences that some of the older children have had. Have you seen that impact on children that you have now compared to maybe a few years ago?
I saw it more last year than this year. I'm not seeing it like it was last year. In our building specifically, we had a lot of I mean, these children were in the house for so long, and I think at the time we were going through an iPad epidemic right before the pandemic, and then we went virtual, and so it became something that the children had to lean on after we were trying to kind of get away from it. So, but I did see it more so last year with last year's little children.
Well, that's good to hear, because maybe
is.
going forward, some of the elementary school teachers and staff won't see what they're seeing right now, or
Right.
not to the extent, if that's any indication.
Yeah.
My second question is, and this might be a Rod and Ben question as well, how are we tracking those students that stay within the district of that 75-ish? How do we track them through third grade so that we can see how they progress into reading? I know we used to, but do we still do that to that extent?
Yeah, we have data on our children that stay with us. I will say that we have an exceedingly high rate of retainment for our kids that stay with us. And we absolutely can track how they perform compared to their peers. But high scope is a very high level, high quality, I would say, curriculum, and challenges the kids. So that's a good thing.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
Thanks, Jessica. So I've worked for a statewide early childhood organization for 12 years. So
Okay,
this
awesome.
I don't know the specifics of your day-to-day, but I know kind of the bigger policy pieces. And something we would hear over and over again, we still would hear, is the transition piece being really challenging for schools with curriculum and standards. And, you know, I think it's probably a little bit easier in the school district as compared to private childcare moving into school districts, because they don't have that opportunity to always work together like you all are. So I'm just curious, can you give us a sense of a few of the strategies that you said that you're working on transition pieces? I'm just curious, what are some of the things that you all are doing to help
Yep.
children transition to kindergarten?
So we do a 12-week transition plan where the families and the children, and we do this in the classroom, and then we send home resources based on what we're working on. So like our first week would be, you know, math skills, and then we would send home things that they can do at home, and then they would focus on that in the classroom for that week. So every week leading up to the last week of school, we do something that's called the kindergarten transition, 12 weeks. Another thing we do, and I've collected this from a lot of the kindergarten teachers, is they kind of give us a sheet of things that the children are expected to have mastered or in the process of mastering. And then we send that home with the families, and we also work on those items in the classroom. So, for example, I know getting on snow items and boots and coats, it sounds simple, but it's actually something that we work on with the kids, and it's part of the lesson plan, you know. So we do those things in the classroom to help with when they move up to kindergarten. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Just as a comment, I guess statewide, what we hear is that, and I don't know if Rod or Ben would agree with this, and this is not necessarily a discussion for tonight, but in general, we hear across school districts, kindergarten teachers saying, and preschool teachers being frustrated because they're like, there's so rigorous standards in kindergarten compared to what I guess we're used to. And that can be really challenging developmentally for young children. So I don't know where our school district stands, and that is just something that's a pattern that we hear across the state as far as, and I'm not saying it's our school district's push on that. It's, you know, the state standards or, you know, the requirements we hear aren't necessarily always developmentally appropriate for children at 5 or 6. So I don't know, Rod, if you have anything to say about that. I'm just kind of curious about how that's showing up in our school district or not.
Well, yeah, we moved when the state looked at standards. I mean, what used to be first grade standards are now in kindergarten. There was a lot more social, emotional play in kindergarten 10, 15 years ago than there is now. And there's plenty of school systems across the world that, you know, believe those standards should be introduced at age 7 or 8 or even 9. And they have the data that shows that waiting that long actually shows an increase later on at 10, 11, and 12. So I would say that what you're saying, there's a lot of research that backs that up.
Jessica, you had something?
Yeah. I
Thanks,
was
Rob.
just wondering is high scope a requirement for all GSRP programs, or is that something?
There's
that we
two
were
that we
mentioning?
choose from. There's TS Gold and there's High Scope, or I'm sorry, TS Gold is the assessment for, is it creative curriculum? Is creative curriculum or High Scope, and then we just chose High Scope.
Okay. And then, if I may, thank you so much for the notes last month. They were so creative and adorable and heartwarming. Like, it was so nice to see all the different classes and what you did with them. It was
They did those
super
on their
cute.
own.
So, fantastic. Thanks.
You're welcome. I hope the glue was dried.
It was awesome.
Thank you, May.
Yeah.
Thanks. And my little grandchildren saw them, and the ones that could read were looking at it, and they loved the pictures.
Oh,
So
good.
Please tell your students they did a great job.
I will.
And you did an amazing job tonight.
Thanks.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thanks.
And we hope you will come back and see us again
I
sometime.
will. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, our next topic is our 21-22 budget amendment.
Yes, I'm going to ask Mrs. Gray to come forward. She's going to provide us with our budget amendment presentation.
I'm super bummed that I came in after May. You guys are, it's so boring.
Fun pictures.
I know,
Maybe
okay,
if you
so,
use counting blocks, it would be more fun.
I know, I wish I could make it exciting, it's just numbers. Okay, so we're here to talk about the budget revisions for 21-22. I'll start off with the general fund. We start off with the beginning fund balance, $6,698,813. This was our June 30 audit actual number. And then our revenue, we're estimating at $43,217,000. Expenses, $43,166,000. That leaves us an estimated operating surplus at $50,982. And an estimated ending fund balance, just over $6.7 million. And that's about 15.64% of our total expenditures. Slide 3, this is just a copy of the general fund resolution that the board is being asked to approve tonight. Okay. This slide, slide 4, in case you're looking at your handout, it's our general fund comparison. The yellow side shows our budget to actual, so we're looking at where we ended up with actuals at June 30th at our audit versus our revision right now. And then on the blue side, we're comparing the two budgets, the original back in June that was approved versus the revised budget that's getting presented tonight. And at the bottom line, changes are, I consider very insignificant. A change of 50,000 budget to actual, a change of 36,000 budget to revision from original. So. Okay, going on to slide 5. This is where we break down what happened on the revenue side. There's a lot of details here. We're going to just hit some highlights to save some time. We have discussed all of these things in the Finance Committee, so feel free to ask questions. But on the local revenue side, really a couple of predominant things that we'll just kind of repeat in each of the revenue sections. One, at original budget time, we really had just estimates, and now we have better data. So on local property taxes, taxable value decreased. This, we kind of chase this all year round, so this is, we just are capturing what we know right now. So taxes, we're estimating to go down. And at original budget time, we really didn't know what was going to happen with some of our local expenditures, like athletic, gate receipts, community ed. Those are things that during COVID, just shut down. So at original budget time, we had a lot lower revenue, and now we're estimating it to be quite a bit higher. And going on to the state, so once again, during original budget time, back in June, we were really working with estimates, estimated FTEs, estimated per pupil funding, and now, moving forward to, now we know we already had fall count, and we already have been allocated our per pupil foundation allowance. So that's really the driving factors in the state side. On the federal side, same theme. Back in June, we only knew estimated allocations on grants, and there were a lot of things that we didn't have access to. And now on Title I, 2, 3, and 4, now we have our full allocations and approvals on those grants. ESSER 2, we only had a partial allocation, so this is the remainder of the allocation. So we have, an additional 1.14 million that we're adding to the budget on the federal side, because at our original budget time, they had only given us a portion of the grant. So now it's all been applied for and approved, so here we are adding it to our budget. Okay. This is a graph of our revenue, just kind of slicing it into pieces based on how we just discussed. So our state side is the largest percentage of our revenue, 75%. And then our local revenue, primarily property taxes, 14%. Federal revenue, 10%, and then some other miscellaneous at 1%. General fund expenditures. This is where we're just looking at a comparison of expenditures from the budget revision from the original budget. I'm just going to highlight 4 areas. In particular, looking at salaries and benefits, you can see that it's showing a decrease in total salary and benefits of $277,000. Not a huge percentage change, but just worth noting that at original budget time, we had everybody, primarily it's instructional staff that is driving this. Teachers, we planned on them coming back. We really in June don't really know who's going to retire, who's going to resign. We have limited information. Moving forward to now, we've filled our retirements, resignations, and so when we take a staff member that has been here for 25, 30 years and hire somebody to replace a resignation or a retirement, it's usually at a lower salary and benefit rate. So this is reflecting that. I want to look at purchase services. We had a $918,000 increase, and this is mostly subs and staff. So our sub budget, it kind of exploded. We really had to increase subs just to really make the school life work. So we've put in what we call premier subs to kind of stabilize our subs and make sure that we could get bodies there when needed. And also our GSRP staff is a purchase service. So we had a significant increase due to raises and additional funding, and this is reflecting that. Capital outlay, we had a $1.3 million increase. This is primarily related to equipment costs for ESSER 2. So when we increase the revenue on the federal side, this is the expenditure that matches it. And then outgoing transfers, there's a $385,000 increase there. We have a new transfer to a fund. It's a new capital project fund. So this reflects that. So in all, our total general fund expenditures increased $2.5 million. So slide 8 is all the details, and we've gone through these in great detail during the Finance Committee. So just to save some time, I want to have you guys be able to look at it and let me know if you have any questions, but we'll just kind of skim over that and go to the graph. Okay, so this is how we slice it up by object code. Salaries and benefits is typically the largest percentage. It's at 74%. Purchase services, 9%. That would be our subs and any staff that we hire through a third party like EduStaff. Contracted services is 5%, and that'd be for like repairs and maintenance and items like that, mostly like a maintenance cost. Supplies at 5%. Capital outlay, 5%. Other, it's our transfers, 2%, and then dues and fees doesn't even register, it's less than 1%. Looking at our general fund expenditures in a different way, we can graph it by function code. So instruction would be everybody in the classroom, that's 56%, which you expect in a school district to be the highest percentage. Pupil support, this would be such as like our direct student services, special ed, speech, social workers, that's 11%. General support services, 10%. That'd be the board, executive administration, business services. Operations is at 9%. Transportation, 4%. Central services, this would be HR, technology kind of services. Those are at 3%. Athletics, 2%. And other at 5%. Want to touch on some of the enrollment data that's really causing our state funding to change. For 21-22, the traditional blend is being used to calculate the membership. I don't know if you remember last year they used something different called the super blend. They've let that go, and we've gone back to the traditional blend, which is 90% of our fall count of 21 plus 10% of our spring count 21. That gives us a blended membership of 3,512.94. Our actual fall FTE increased from the previous fall, but our budget FTE decreased. So back in June, when I had to estimate, I estimated it lower than where we actually came in. So, and then our funding, it increased to 8,700. In the budget back in June, I put 8,450. So that's a $250 per pupil increase from the original budget. Slide 12. It's just a recap of where our fall count has landed. This data is from CEPI, and we go back and forth on, on numbers, but I feel like CEPI is consistent. It's our audited numbers. So you can see here, I like to look at this graph because you can kind of see, you can track the trends. And I feel like the trend is promising in most grades. There are some dips, but like if you look at from 2020 at And the orange in 2020, fourth grade, if you follow that down to fifth grade, in 21, it went from 265 to 270. And you can see then 240 to 242 for fifth to sixth, fifth to sixth. So I feel like it's promising. So our 3-year average loss is around 1%. Next graph is just a visual on our trend of our fund equity. And we seem to be hovering in the last couple of years, and this current year estimating around 6.7. It is nice to see that we've had a steady increase, and I hope that trend continues. Last year we ended the year at 16.81%. This year we're estimating it at 15.64%. It is a percentage of expenditures, so as our expenditures increase, it just skews the percentage, it kind of dilutes it. So this is, I have a heading correction. It's not 2021, it's 21-22 food service budget revision. So this is our last fund that we're going to revise, ending last year, but our beginning fund balance this year. Audited numbers, $712,469 in fund balance. Revenue is estimated at a little over 2.3 million. Expenditures, a little over 2.5, giving us an operating loss of $187,318, giving us an estimated ending fund balance of $525,151, or about 20.9% of expenditures. And this is a planned decrease in fund balance because we are required by MDE to spend down our fund balance based on a calculation. So we're hoping that we can get the expenditures in that budget, but it tends to be challenging. We're seeing a lot of purchases that are taking 30 plus weeks to get ovens and the type of equipment that we want to put into our kitchens, and it just remains challenging. So we keep working at it though. And so the final page, slide 15, is just a copy of the food service budget resolution. So sorry if I talked really fast. Any questions for me, or?
I have more just a comment, Chris. I know you speak a lot about, like, this was just an estimate, this was just an estimate. I think we're exceptionally blessed, actually, as a district, that these are not just darts on a dartboard. You are extremely skilled and knowledgeable, so these are educated estimates. And when your final balance is only $50,000 off, when you're talking over $6.5 million, that's a testament to how well you do for us. So thank you.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments?
Can you come do my checkbook?
Sure.
You can teach that life skills class at the high school.
That would be fun.
Anyone else? Chris, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Actually, I'm sorry, Chris, to call you back. One quick question on the food service budget, though. I know you spoke to, like, we're trying to spend it down, but we're waiting. Like, we know we want this thing, we put it in order. I guess on the, I don't know if it's the federal, state, or whatever side, but do they give us any, like, any leeway on that? Like, it's not like we're not trying to spend it. It's not our,
Right.
not our reason that it's delayed.
So I'm estimating our fund balance, if we were to have revenue perfect and expenditures perfect, our ending fund balance would be $525,000. Well, our calculation, we're safe at around $730,000. So, that gives us a little bit of wiggle room. But, the thing is, we have claims every month. So if our claims are higher than what I anticipate, that's more revenue. So then we're just always like, every month I'm analyzing, okay, what was our operating, surplus or loss every month, and just kind of.
I guess I'm asking, like, if we put out a purchase order, even though we haven't received or necessarily paid that,
It has to be delivered.
Has to be delivered in order to
June
count.
30th, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Just asking.
Yep.
Hold on.
Okay.
I know I beat you up at the finance committee all the time. And I know you hate it, but
No, I don't
how
hate
come
it.
we're not 780,000 to the good? Because if we got 250 per pupil extra.
Are you talking food service?
Because our overall, how much are we going to be to the good, do you think?
Are you talking general fund or just food service?
No, general fund.
Okay.
So if we estimated 8450, I didn't catch this in the finance meeting the other day.
Okay.
So for 8450 per student, and they gave us 8700, that's 250 more per student times 3,500 students, gives us $800,000 to the good
Yep.
to put towards buildings, which I would like to do.
Okay.
So are we gonna have that much?
Well,
Did we overspend on other things? Is that where that 800?
well, you know, like at risk, we adjusted at risk. That's in the
Yeah.
state line too. So I mean, there's a lot
So
of,
some came off of that 800,000. They gave us some on the students, but they took some from our specialty ones. That's where we're at. I just want to make sure, because somebody's going to look at that, and I forgot to ask you that the other day, because I look at it
it's not a
simple.
direct
yeah.
in and out. Like
Yeah.
it's, you know, like there's a lot of forces in revenue and then they don't, and there's a lot of forces in expenditures. And so there isn't like just one direct correlation to
Right.
that one.
Because we
revenue.
lost it in other areas.
Possibly. I mean,
Well,
are
we
you
got
saying-
to be able to answer that though to the public, because if there's
Well,
770 to the
lost
good,
the
we have to.
revenue? Are you talking revenue or expenditures?
Revenue.
Well,
So if we're 775 good
Yeah,
with pupils.
specifically, if you look at on slide 5 under revenue on the state side, so for the per pupil funding in the fall FTE change, that was 781,000, but we did have some declining, it's called declining enrollment funding, which is, we had estimated 29B funding continuing, but it didn't. They pulled it out of the legislation, so that was 438,000 loss.
So then we're only 300 to the good.
Right.
Right. Okay, that's all I wanted to clear up so everybody can understand that. Because if you just look at, some people are going to look at this and say, oh my God, we're 800 grand to the good, 775.
Yeah.
And then it's coming out of other line items.
Right, and we also had higher, you know,
Yep.
sub costs
Yep.
and so.
Yep, and we gave some of our staff raises to
Right.
retain them. So I'm
Yep.
okay with all that, to retain good staff.
Exactly.
Well, good, that's why we got it cleared up now, so everybody knows.
Well, and Chuck, unless I'm not following along, didn't we also start a new transfer to a capital outlay to
Yes.
prepare for
Yes.
Capital
future
improvement for this,
building
yes.
things? So we are
That's a good
moving
point,
towards
thank you.
additional
Yes.
building pieces that you wanted, so.
See, that's, you gotta bring that up.
Yeah,
So
that's
say-
expenditures,
But
so
see,
that's why-
I'm trying to get you to say that, Chris, so when the public's listening out there.
Yeah, well, that's why it's hard to look at just, you know,
Right.
revenue alone and say, well, where is that money? Because,
Right.
you know, expenditures move too, so they're both, you know,
Have
you
you
gotta talk
reviewed
about all of it.
the governor's proposed budget? Because I reviewed it in depth Sunday night and Monday. And it seems like there's going to be a lot of money for building and improvements for structures that need to be demolished. He has billions of dollars set off to the side for that.
I haven't looked at that as in detail
Okay.
as the per pupil funding piece of
Right.
it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chris. You
Yeah,
did a
you're
good
welcome.
job as always. I was easy on you. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. All right, moving on. We now have, I think, a discussion with Rod about our winter benchmark data.
Yes, I want to turn it over to Mr. Heatherton, who's going to talk a little bit about our winter benchmark data, which we test our students 3 times a year. And so he is going to provide a presentation for you this evening.
Can you hit right?
Sure you can.
Thank you. And maybe it's on the front one.
You want me to switch it off here? Have them on right? Put it on PC?
I only spent 30 minutes making sure those screens worked this afternoon. Is that you on the mouse then? All right. So, as Ben said, this is our benchmark reporting. So Section 98B is the reporting of our benchmark information to you, the board, by February of each year. Section 104 is the actual benchmarking. So we are obligated to benchmark test K through 8 3 times a year. As you know, through MTSS, we've been doing this for 12 to 15 years. So we've been way ahead of the curve. And you're going to see all sorts of data sets here. 3 of the data sets are what I gave to you at academic achievement, and then I threw in a 4th one, which is, I'll, when we get that slide, explain that. That's how the data hub pulls it as well. We have 4 state MDE approved benchmark assessments, Curriculum Associates, DRC, NWA, and Renaissance. We use Renaissance, and so every time you have looked at STAR data for reading and math over the last 10 years, that is what you are looking at there. Just as a side note, there are so many different ways to pull this data. We look at it 100 different ways, and to Carrie's point earlier, there was a point pre-pandemic where we did follow kids, and the longer you were in the district, the more likely you were to have academic success further on, all the way towards high school. We also took in 14 different trainings just on Renaissance alone. So each building, all 7 buildings, had 2 separate 1-hour trainings on how to pull data, look at data, and do things with the data, which the most important thing really is filling our students' needs and adapting instruction. But this will just give us a little insight as we talked about at academic achievement. So this was that benchmark assessment by demographics that we talked about, where we did see approximately a 10% increase in students meeting grade level from the fall to now in February, and we saw about a little more than 3% increase in reading, and those followed the different demographic groups. This is the one that the MTSS coordinators and coaches always work on. It's that longitudinal data. Here you can see that we have 6 years marked out there. What you'll notice in the gray is COVID. So for 4 straight cycles, we had no data. So we're starting over. Really, you're not going to get a good 3-year trend until the spring of 23-24, because as you can see, the 2 columns on the right are this fall and this winter, and those are our first 2 data sets since the pandemic. You'll also notice a lot of green, and that's it when we hit that 80% of our kids hit our benchmarking, and that is in early literacy. Those are our 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds, and you can see pre-pandemic students were coming to us and hitting those benchmarks coming to us, because in kindergarten, you know, that's the first we see them at our K2 buildings. And so we're hoping that as we collect over the next 2 to 3 year cycle that we'll pick back up on hitting those high marks. And this is our math as well. You can see a lot of different areas by building and by grade level where we hit that 80% pre-pandemic. As we discussed last night, the pandemic, I think Ben said there's some research out there that says it's put us back 10 years behind in gaps. So we will continue to track that. This one is by intervention. So as you have all of these different districts dumping in all this data, it goes to the data hub. The data hub takes in whatever assessment you chose as a district, and then it spits out information to the state. So the state now is tracking your benchmarking data, and so they can pull and look at every district and the data that that district uses. One of the outputs that comes out of that report from the data hub via the state is, you know, how intensive or what percent of your kids are behind. And so I used our STAR data to pull that as well, just so we could show you that of the 17 groupings there, 16 of those groupings had students, less students, just from the 4 months or 5 months from fall to winter be intensive, meaning we had less kids to support just in this first year looking at our data. Which leads me to some actually pretty exciting celebrations. We've been talking about gaps, and the pandemic and all of the learning loss, but when you look at the data and dig into some of those charts, I was pretty excited. Approximately 200 less, so that was that last chart, approximately 200 less students overall on our K-8 intensive list. So from the fall to the winter, 200 kids came off that list that needed intensive help. over 300 more met their STAR Math grade level equivalency. So from fall to right now in the winter, over 300 kids hit their grade mark. And remember that benchmark changes. So if you're fourth grade in the fall, you're 4.0. But if you're fourth grade in the winter, you're 4.6. So not only did we meet 300 more kids meet the benchmark, they met a higher benchmark because the benchmark always goes up with the point in time of the school year. We had, just as I said, over a 3% increase in our grade level equivalency in reading. And then our two highlights, we're always shooting for that 80% because research says with great classroom tier 1 instruction, 80% of the kids will be just fine. And you use your supports and resources on those other 20%. So first grade, big shout out to them, 74% in our first ever testing cycle after the pandemic had hit their grade level equivalency in math, so almost to that 80% mark. And at Cyrene Elementary, the building as a whole had the highest building percentage, 72% of all Cyrene students hit their grade level equivalency in STAR Math. So despite all of the talk and real talk of all of the gaps and all of the struggles and not having data over the last 3 years, we're still seeing pockets of success, and there's good places to look for that. So I'm pretty excited. This is just, 4 months in. We'll take another look in May and see what the spring data looks like. Questions?
I have a quick question. Are there other districts within the county that put out this information? Have we ever looked where we fare from ours to theirs?
Up to this point, the state has only put out like the M-STEP yearly testing, benchmarking and requiring benchmarking. This report to you is all brand new law. So I have not seen an output of comparables on benchmarks. And remember, they could all have one of those four, and the law actually says, or whatever you else want to use. Yeah. So the benchmarking right now is from multiple sources, but you could find STAR districts if they release that, or go to the data hub and dig that out.
I'm just curious, because I look at that and I think, one, a huge, we need to commend our teachers, definitely. Not just for where they are now, but how they quickly adapted and provided resources, and a teaching structure that I can't even imagine at the elementary level during the pandemic. But I also want to commend our parents and our community. So, but as well, actually, everyone at this table, because I think the fact that we supported parental choice and gave a lot of options so that each family could pick what would work best for them. I just think everybody within PreK really adapted, that hopefully we're a little bit above the curve, and maybe, although there will be gaps, we know that, and obviously some social emotional learning issues, but if we're still not that far off on academic success, I think everyone in PreK just needs to give themselves a little pat on the back one way or another.
Absolutely, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, I want to echo that. If we're at 74 to 78%, and we're only supposed to be at 80 with all the stuff that we've been hit with, I think this district is doing really, really well. And it's more of a team effort, because I think our teachers are committed, our parents are committed, this board's committed, and all our support staff and administration is committed. So I'm impressed with those numbers. I want them to go up. You know me, I always want to strive for more, which leads me to my next question. And maybe it's to Carrie and Rod. What are we planning on summer school this year to make that so we can increase that number for our 2022, 2023 year? Are we going to do an extensive summer program more so? Or maybe, Ben, you can answer that. I don't know.
So I didn't know I was planning summer school, but I'm glad to know. But they did actually.
I'm putting Carrie in charge of summer school this year.
I know it was a lot of work to do last
I'm going to have some time.
Yeah, but what are we doing?
We are actually looking to replicate what we did. So I think our budget was over 10 times the normal year, and we have it set up for at least 2 more years of the very same extensive 3 different levels, multiple points of support staff and teachers, so
Good, and we have a lot of grant money for that.
we do.
And Miss Gray, pay attention, find us some money for that.
It's already,
Because-
it's
yeah, I
already set aside.
Yeah, it is. Find us more, because that's a great program to keep our kids where we need to be at. That's great. Thank you,
Alyssa,
guys.
you had something?
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, thanks. That was
Just
great.
as a quick follow-up to the summer school conversation, I can imagine as it gets more popular, there's going to be more kids who want to get into it. We may not be able to, so will there be prioritization for kids that may need a bit more support?
If we ever run into that situation, I'm sure we can prioritize. In 18 years, I haven't seen that happen. Not saying it won't happen, but we seem to always find enough support staff and teachers to show up and take those kids on, so.
I have confidence in our new marketing person.
I think we tripled our attendance last year and still
did.
were able to have a decent summer school class size. So under 20, I
You
think
weren't
most
maxed
were about
out, were you?
15. We could have done more. I mean, again, it's summer school, you want to keep the class
Yeah.
size low,
Right.
but we could have definitely expanded.
So Rod, that 200 that came off the list and the 300 who exceeded the benchmark is what I recall. Were they in any particular grade levels? Do you have that data broken out? You don't have to give it to us now, but I'd be curious maybe at our next academic
Yeah.
achievement.
I mean, it was spread out kind of everywhere, but I did notice like in that 300 number, fourth and seventh grade saw a 10% increase. So those were two of the highest grade levels that saw that increase. But overall, you could kind of see those pockets, similar to the kids that came off the intensive. It was 16 of the 17 categories, so some lost 10 kids, some lost 25.
Yes.
So they kind of across the board.
That makes me think, with Carrie bringing up that question, that was the most. What was the least? What was the least increase? Because maybe we should concentrate on that if we have a certain section that, that just kind of spurred that
Right,
thought.
yeah.
And I know you're thinking of it, but do you know that data?
And it depends. You mean math or reading and by what demographic? But yeah, I could find out.
Yeah, I think that would be beneficial to the board for us to target where we could put some of those resources for the kids to catch up. Because Carrie brought up a great question. I didn't think about it. You're saying this was the most increase. Let's look at what's the kind of the bottom increase, and then, or, if they just stayed stagnant and try to put some resources there, which I know you guys are probably already working on that.
So for example, in reading, you saw the only grade level that didn't go down in intensive students would have been the first grade that went from 87 to 94. So you're talking about a 7-student swing in that grade level more versus most grade levels had a 10 to 20 student swing to the positive.
That was the question, so you answered it. Thank you.
Well, and sometimes when you get to know students, you notice who needs more support. So sometimes you'll see those numbers go up and then go back down. So it's not always a bad thing because you're able to identify better.
Right, and really what you're looking at is over time. So this is just halfway through the year. Those numbers will swing differently for spring, but they'll also swing differently over grade levels, from first to second to third to fourth, and you can take a look at data over multiple stretches, the beginning of a building, the end of a building. Like I said, we had 14 hours of training on just to pull reports and look at them. There's a million ways to look at the data.
Who's pulling all the data? The principals and the
It
teachers
would
input?
be, Travis pulls data, Kevin pulls data, Amy Jackson, our MTSS coordinator, pulls the most data. Our coaches, Becky Trent and Sandy Cook, myself, that team,
Okay.
When's the next assessment due?
May.
Okay. We probably won't see anything else from you until next fall, correct?
Right, we could do a fall report and we'll have to do that February report.
All right. Thanks, Rod.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. One of our favorite topics, COVID-19 update.
Thank you. It's been a while since we've had the pleasure of talking about this extensively, but I wanted to update everyone that meeting with the health department, the number of cases across the county and certainly in our area have dropped precipitously and to the point where those numbers are less than half of what they were even just a short month ago, where they were actually sky high. Hospitalizations are down, hospital capacity has increased, and we're seeing those are all good trends. And so you may have seen the news just today, the state of Michigan removed their mask requirement, from the recommendation from the health department. So as you discussed just a little over a few weeks ago at a board meeting, the resolution that you had made to continue masking during the heightened case counts was that the masks would become highly recommended starting tomorrow. And so it's on the agenda for you to discuss, but unless you take affirmative action to that proposal, we will continue with it as it stands, and we will move tomorrow to highly recommended instead of required. And I would notify parents this evening of that change unless you chose to make an adjustment. So it's on the agenda for you to discuss if necessary.
Any comments? Anybody want to start?
I just have a
I
question.
think we just leave it alone and let it die. Highly recommended and
Is
move
it
on.
highly recommended across the board? Not just school buildings, but buses as well?
So the school buses are still under a federal requirement.
Okay.
So that is something that's not really up for change.
That's what I wanted to clarify.
In the school buildings,
Okay.
you have the determination. And as of right now, you've chosen to make them the statement would be highly recommended.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm just going to point out that we have to be cautious. It's great that the numbers are coming down, but we all know that folks have greater access to home tests that may not be being reported. So I don't know how you'll factor that in, Ben. People will still let you know that their children or that they, as a staff member, have COVID. I don't know how that's going to work.
Yeah, we still have they still report them to the school, and we still when they get a positive test result reported to the health department, they're calling us, and vice versa, we're calling them. I think you're correct. I mean, certainly with the more prevalent, access to at-home tests, there may or may not be as many reported. We continue to monitor symptoms in our classrooms. So if we have a child who's symptomatic, and I think that's one of the things we've learned that's a really good thing coming out of the pandemic is, if you're sick, you don't go to work, you don't come to school because we don't want, whether it's COVID or anything else, we don't want anybody to be sick. And so I think that's a positive, takeaway. So I can tell you that we're seeing a much lower amount of students in buildings that are, if they're coughing, I mean, it's an instant, So symptoms are really a driver at this point, and so I think that kind of gets us back to, a new normal as it relates to that.
So our previous recommendation was to encourage the use of masks, correct?
Yep.
And I would also ask that we reinforce the importance of hand sanitizing and washing hands and those types of things. And like you were saying, if you have symptoms, to be very cautious and staying home.
And I think another carryover, I didn't go into great depth on it, but we continue to utilize our sanitizing process in all of our desks, our door handles, our high contact touch points. We do it on buses. We're increasing, we are encouraging hand washing breaks. We have the signs up and we have the hand sanitizer available. So I would say that all of those things are just good hygienic practices that we want to continue.
And I think last time we talked about having you still report to us what the cases look like, so that if in fact, we all hope and pray this is not the case, but if it goes back up significantly, that we would reassess it as a board.
Yep, and we're going to continue to maintain our COVID dashboard. So at any time, a parent, a community member, a board, anybody could go onto our website and see our current as well as cumulative case counts for the year for both students or staff. And so we'll continue to maintain that for this entire school year. Yep.
So one last question, Ben, sorry, I was thinking about this afternoon. If we have a staff member, specifically a teacher or someone who's a support person in that classroom, who would like to request that their students wear masks because maybe they have some kind of a concern about their health or the people that they live with. Are they able to do that? I think the question may come up.
Yeah, certainly. We make every accommodation that we can to that. We saw that early on in the pandemic when it came to what modality a teacher might teach and, what setting they might be in. And so certainly we want to, we treat our teachers and our support staff like family. We try to do everything we can to accommodate those needs. I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge, to make that a requirement, but certainly we would work to see if there's a different setting or, if there was an opportunity for even a letter to go home to the parents and requesting it, just as more of a, an additional measure. I think it would be difficult unilaterally to say that if a particular person requested that all of the students would be required. But I do think it's something that's a great question that we need to think about and consider, because we're concerned about everybody, including the staff. So, yeah.
Anybody else? All right.
Great question. I think you covered all of them.
Thank you. I think about this often. So I'm not hearing anything else from my fellow board members, and I'm taking that we will proceed as we had decided last month. Okay. I think you have your decision, Ben.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, moving on. Board action items. We have the approval of the 2021-2022 budget amendment. I need a motion.
So moved.
Support.
That Jack and Alyssa? Any comments or questions? Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approves the 2021-2022 budget amendment as presented. Sue, could you do roll call, please?
Jack Sayer,
Yes.
Jessica Lenave,
Yes.
Alicia Gardner,
Yes.
Alyssa Parks,
Yes.
Brian Sapanic,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey,
Yes.
Carrie Germain.
Yes.
7 yes.
Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. And thank you again, Chris. All right, next we have the approval of bus sale recommendation.
So this recommendation, we had previously set the reserve at $5,500 for bus 97. We're looking to sell this bus. We tried to get this particular bus sold, and unfortunately, we have been unable to do so. We did sell another bus for $5,500, but this one is in just a slightly, not quite as good a shape as maybe the other one was. So we're just requesting your approval on lowering that reserve amount to $4,500, and we believe we'll be able to get it sold for that amount.
All right, thanks, Ben. I need a motion.
So moved.
Support.
Brian and Alicia? All right, any comments or questions? Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approves the updated auction reserve amount for bus number 97 in the amount of $4,500, previously $5,500, as presented. Sue, could you do roll call, please?
Carrie Germain,
Yes.
Alyssa Parks,
Yes.
Alicia Gardner,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey,
Yes.
Jessica Lenave,
Yes.
Brian Sapanic,
Yes.
Jack Sayer.
Yes.
7 yes.
All right, motion passes. Next,
Oh, one question quick, Carrie. That's going to go on the same site, right, Ben?
Yes.
Okay, all
Gov
right.
deals, yep.
Yep, okay.
thanks, Chuck. All right, next we have the approval of the Swartz Creek High School and Middle School office furniture.
So this recommendation is a bond budgeted purchase for the furniture in the middle school and high school office additions.
All right, I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Support.
Chuck, and I think, Jack, you beat Brian a little bit. All right, any comments or questions?
Ben, did this, for what was originally budgeted, is it close to it, or did costs go up quite a bit since?
Actually, these prices came in better than we thought. We purchased off of what's called the Omnia contract, and it gets us, kind of cooperative pricing. And so these numbers are actually less than what we originally projected for those offices. So that was nice to see.
Great, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approves the Swartz Creek High School and Middle School office furniture purchase in the amount of $215,250.20 as quoted by Interior Environment as presented. Sue, could you do roll call, please?
Jack Sayer,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey,
Yes.
Brian Sapanic,
Yes.
Jessica LaNave,
Yes.
Alicia Gardner,
Yes.
Carrie Germain,
Yes.
Alyssa Parks.
Yes.
7 yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. We will have furniture. All right, next we have the approval of the high school parking lot site work resolution, something that we're all very excited about.
Yeah, so I think if you were to ask anyone in our community, what's the number one thing you want done, they would say this particular project. The high school lot has been a real burden for the last decade. It's become worse as a result of all the construction that's had to be done, and we've explained this in the past, but just for everybody's understanding, if we would have done this project first, we would be doing it again, because you can't drive heavy equipment and machinery, particularly concrete trucks and everything else, over new asphalt and hope that it's not gonna, break. So this particular project grew in scope over the course of the bond project as we saw the safety issues in this lot and everything else that we've been trying to address. We had an original budget in the bond of $750,000, and this was 4 years ago. The prices have gone up a little over 30%, and so the base bid ended up being $1.1 million on this project. We've been very fortunate to have a combination of both ESSER funds as well as good budgeting, and quite frankly, we've been fortunate to have good contractors and been able to stay under budget. And so the recommendation before you tonight was discussed at the last bond steering committee. We are recommending the 2 alternates as well. So bid alternate 1 essentially extends the parking lot in front of the Performing Arts Center, which will be very helpful because we are creating curbing which will allow for a parent pickup and drop-off lane here. And so we will eat into some of our existing parking. So especially for special events and things like that at the stadium or at the Performing Arts Center, having that additional lot space will be great. So we're actually moving the lot this way into the woods a little bit. And then bid alternate 2 is constructing the secondary entrance drive onto Cappy Lane, which will have a huge impact in diffusing the traffic congestion for students, and especially when you're dealing with young drivers, that's an important safety measure. So the total bid contracts, and we had good participation. We had actually in the asphalt division, I think we had 11 bidders, which is excellent participation. So costs have gone up, but we've also added scope to this project, and so for your recommendation this evening is the $1.6 million roughly for the high school parking lot improvements project.
And with that, I would entertain a motion. Who wants to be the hero for the community?
So moved.
Brian?
Support.
Jessica? All right. Any comments or questions?
When does the project start?
As soon as we can get them out there, which is going to be pretty much the day after school is out. So we're going to have trucks rolling then.
And I know you just mentioned it, but will all of our projects or all of our heavy projects be done prior to them starting our parking lot?
Yes, on this side of the building. So the phasing plan is that all of this space that gets constructed this summer will be completed. And before they repair all of the final area up on the, let's say, northeast side on this area above the stadium, that's going to have to wait until after all of the locker room renovations are complete from the high school.
I know you're staying on top of it, but I want to ensure that we're not pouring new blacktop and cement, concrete, and then we have more projects going on. So, I mean, by the time, everybody's delayed anyways, but I just want to ensure that we're spending that kind of money for this district, that I want to make sure, asking you, Ben, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but you got to make sure, and it's really, it's the construction manager's job. That's why we're paying him the big money. But you better tell him, I think this whole board will be unhappy if we pour a bunch of money in that parking lot and they decide, oh, we have to do this or we have to do that.
because that's the finished part, and we're getting complaints from everybody, teacher. Even the kids in the high school are complaining about it.
Oh, yeah.
Whoever thought that? They'd be just happy to drive, but they're complaining about the parking lot.
Well, it's like
So
going
just
on-
makes, that's my only concern with this, okay?
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right, and that's part of the pushback that we've had, is that the kids, the parent, everybody wants this lot to be done.
Yeah.
And, we do too.
We can wait a couple more months, I said, just not rush it.
Right, so we didn't want to do it before, because then we would be replacing it, which is throwing good money after bad. So I think that we've waited, and we can do that, and then the phasing would be the trucks for the locker room renovations will have to come through on the northeast side.
That's fine, okay, thank you.
And then, Ben, do we have, I don't know if that's on the site manager or if we need to go to the city or what, but I don't know how long that would take, but I would assume from a liability perspective, with how large this lot is, to make sure that nobody's joyriding in the middle of the night or, driving something through that they shouldn't be. Like what kind of, I guess, security once we start tearing stuff up, that we don't have anybody coming in?
They'll have barricades and things like that. There'll be some inconveniences. We will, when they did and not to get too far into the weeds on this, but part of this project, and we insisted with the project manager, was they're going to do it in a couple phases. So for example, people that are in this office or people that are coming to a board meeting, they can utilize this part of the lot because they're going to be working over there. And then they'll get that done, and then, they'll move to this area so that then people will have to park on that side, So there's a lot of thought and intentionality to that. So there's never a guarantee of anything, but we put barricades up. We're going to have all those pieces in place, and hope that community members will not do, silly things.
And then expectation that we would be done before the start of fall.
Yes, yeah, this is a project that we're doing now so that we can have this ready to go. Our goal is to have it ready for the first football game in August.
Perfect. Thank you.
One more question, are we being good neighbors? Did we get everything surveyed right? Because we talked about it in building committee. I think Brian and Jessica were there, and I don't know if Alyssa was there for that particular meeting, but when we're putting it back here behind these houses, have we approached those individuals just to give them a courtesy? I know it's our property, but it is going to shuffle some traffic around, so we have to be conscientious of our surrounding neighbors.
Yeah, the two houses that are most prominently impacted, we've had conversations. The majority of the drive will actually go through our woods on this side of the retention pond. So there'll still be quite a bit of trees and things like that in between. But the two houses that are a lot that we currently own goes between those houses have been.
And the city's been notified, we're going to have to cut curbs and do all that. Okay, all right, as long as all our Ts are crossed and Is are dotted. All right, thanks, that's all I have.
Yep.
I'll vote yes now. Not to influence the board, but I just want to make sure, okay?
Ben, does the electrical include additional lighting for this parking lot, or?
Yeah, there's extensive lighting. One of the things that we hear all the time, I mean, even last night coming out of the Performing Arts Center, it's dark. And so it's the electrical, which it's great that we have a local Swartz Creek contractor that was low bidder on the electrical project, but the electrical includes all of the site lighting. They run conduit, right, all through this area. So there are adequate LED lighting all the way around, which lasts for, tens of thousands of hours. And then you've also got the new drive, so you're going to have light posts along there as well.
Thank you. I don't know how that impacts neighbors, but that would be the other thing, too. Good for us.
We work with the city on that all the time. A lot of times, we just did it at Mary Crapo, where the city asked if we could just change the angle, just a little bit. And so we have those things, and sometimes we dim them more at different times. So, yeah.
All right, with that, I don't know where we left off. Comments and questions? Any others?
We're good, Karen, move on, we're good.
All right, good. Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approves the Swartz Creek High School Parking Lot Improvements Project to Fessler and Bowman for a concrete bid of $236,420. Advance contracting and electrical for an electrical bid of $140,404. LA Construction Corporation for a site work bid of $898,395. and Aztec Asphalt, Inc. for paving and resurfacing bid of $376,900. Total contracts for the Swartz Creek High School parking lot improvements project are $1,652,119 as presented. Sue, could you do roll call, please?
Jessica LaNave,
Yes.
Alicia Gardner,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey,
Yes.
Alyssa Parks,
Yes.
Carrie Germain,
Yes.
Jack Sayer,
Yes.
Brian Serpanic.
Yes.
7 yes.
All right,
Hooray.
motion passes.
That's like a raise for the staff too. Nobody's gonna get their tires knocked off their car.
Exactly.
We're going
Say
to
the only
need,
person not clapping is the insurance agent.
we're going to need a plaque for Brian and Jessica that says they made the motions to adopt this. All right, thank you, everybody. And then finally, we have the approval of the Swartz Creek High School's course guide for 22-23.
This is our registration guide for the high school. These courses were presented to Academic Achievement a month ago, but essentially they're getting ready, believe it or not, to start the scheduling process. And so this is an annual just approval of their course guide as it's presented.
All right, with that, I will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Support.
Alicia and Alyssa. Uh-huh. It's my test. All right. Any comments or questions? Great opportunities for our students. Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approves the Swartz Creek High School course guide for 2022-23 as presented. Sue, why don't we make this a roll call as well, please?
Sure can. Brian Serpanic. Yes. Carrie Germain,
Yes.
Jack Sayer,
No.
Alyssa Parks,
Yes.
Alicia Gardner,
Yes.
Jessica LaNave,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey.
Yes.
6 yes.
All right, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. All right, next we have public comment opportunity. If you'd like to address the board, please step forward to the podium, state your name, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Wilson. Been in district. My family's been in district for about 4 years now. So I will say that I've longed for the day that my son can attend school and see everybody's face. This is his first grade year, so he's been in kindergarten. This is now his first grade year, and it's been interesting for him, to say the least. So my oldest is in the 7th grade. My middle daughter is in the 4th grade as well, over at Deke. So we're excited for him to go to school and see everybody's face. I think I can speak for hundreds, if not thousands, of other parents out there that thank you all for the last 2 years. I know that it's been tough, to make a lot of decisions. A lot of decisions have been out of our hands and out of our control as well. But I do appreciate everything. Swartz Creek's been a fantastic district to be in through all of this. Empowering everybody to make decisions for themselves has been fantastic. And I thank you all for that, for driving this community. And I'm excited for tomorrow for my kids. And I would encourage us all to remember that the science, not the political science, has taught us a lot in the last 2 years. And I think we're making a good step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate it.
Anyone like to comment, President? May I comment? Sure. Thank you for those words, and I'm happy to know that your kids will see faces, and I hope as well that they stay well and safe, and that this continues, but thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Okay, comments and questions from the board.
I just have one comment, if I may. I was looking through our informational items, and we had a resignation of a teacher that personally impacted me quite a bit back in 8th grade in his algebra class. His name was Adam Vollmer. And I would just like to say that Mr. Vollmer was a tremendous teacher, and the loss of him to our district is it's profound. I'm sad to see him go, but hopefully his endeavors in the future are just great for him. And I want to thank him for all that he's done for me personally and many of our students out there.
Thanks, Jack. Anyone else?
I just have a quick question, or a comment, I'm sorry. I attended the State of the District presentation last night. I was exceptionally impressed with representation from our community, but as well from our staff. Those that didn't attend, or I believe that there's a recording, am I correct?
Yep, that recording is being processed by ITC, and then that'll be pushed out as soon as it's done.
Okay, so when that's pushed out or available online, I encourage those that didn't participate to watch that. And I just want to publicly say how humbling it was as a board member, but also just as a community member. I posed a question to the panel of teachers, administrators, what do they need? There's we spoke a lot, and there was a lot presented on the challenges that we have faced, how they have overcome, kind of hopes and aspirations for the future. And as a board member, I just presented, what is it that you need? If we were to write a blank check, which Chuck's probably having a coronary when I say that, but if there was, what would you want? What is it that we are not giving you? And I'm still kind of blown away that literally nobody could answer that. That all they really care about is taking care of our kids. And nothing was extravagant, and they actually kind of were challenged by that. So it feels good, I'm going to be honest, that we are providing for our students and we're providing for our teachers. But it is humbling to know that we've got some incredibly selfless individuals that work within our district. And even when given a blank check, don't know what to spend it on. They are just happy to come and do the work that they're doing and impact our children. So.
Amen. Go ahead.
So the only thing I wanted to mention for the board, if you weren't aware, is that GCI is having an open house tomorrow at 3:30. I'm assuming weather permitting. So we'll see if it continues, but 3:30 to 6, and that is a program that many of our students take advantage of. So if anyone's interested in learning more about GCI, the Career Institute, tomorrow at 3:30.
Thank you, and I'm glad you mentioned that. There was mention of a middle school event that's coming up. I'm wondering if you could give details on that.
Yep, it's a middle school STEM night, and I can send the date. It's posted on the website, but I believe it's March 2nd. Is that correct, or is it March 4th?
3rd.
3rd?
Right?
Okay, I missed both. March 3rd.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Sure.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you. The state of the schools last night, it was really nice. I'll say, Ben, your presentation was really nice. And then may I share part of our conversation? So afterwards, I said something to Ben about it, and that it felt really nice that what the panelists were saying up there was what, as a board member, I've already been hearing. And then he said, yeah, I didn't give them the questions in advance. It wasn't something that was staged or planned for, that as a board member, as a community member, what we are talking about here in our committee meetings, the work that I hear that we're doing, what I hear from my kid, it is all lined up. And I very much appreciate that. So when ITC, which I do appreciate them doing the work on that and being there when they put it out, I hope the public knows that it's an accurate representation. It's honest commentary by our staff, and I appreciate that very much. Thanks for all the hard work, too. And our students, because we had students talking as well.
So Ben, if you don't mind, I want to read the list of the folks that were presenting in there last night. You, of course, you did an amazing job. Miss Tiara Goodman from the 8th grade, Lily West from the high school, And then we had the panelists that consisted of Rod Heatherton, Lori Anthony from the high school, Amy Paul from Moorish, Michelle Wildy, the principal at Cyring, Mary Rock from the middle school, Jim Kitchen, the Swartz Creek High School principal, Melissa Titsworth from the middle school, she's a principal there, and Elena Cook, our representative, and you guys did an amazing job. So thanks to all of you folks for your time, too. Those 2 hours just flew by, so thank you. Anybody else? And if not, we have the need to go into closed session. For the purposes of negotiations, OMA 15.268, Section 8AE, A and E, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Alicia and Jessica, any comments or questions?
May we take a 5-minute personal break in transition?
Yes, we do need a roll call vote, and then we can go take 5 minutes to have a little break.
Thank you.
Alicia Gardner,
Yes.
Jessica Lenave,
Yes.
Jack Sayer,
Yes.
Alyssa Parks,
Yes.
Carrie Germain,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey,
Yes.
Brian Sapanic.
Yes.
7 yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. And I would be remiss, May, if we did not thank you once again for coming tonight. It was a great presentation. Should be very proud of the program you're leading. And Chris, thank you so much. Travis, thank you. And Derek, of course, thank you. All right. So we'll take 5 minutes. We will reconvene in the conference room.